It's the diary of a tired black man. Hey, it's the diary of a tired. Peace, family. It's your boy FONZi NeuTRON representing Bout.online.com. DOA TBM tapped in once again with some fresh conversation. Joined with Dean, and we got some topics we're going to be exploring, just looking at a few things that's going on with modern day dynamics. One of the things I found quite interesting recently, which I'm sure a lot of people may have seen, I'm not sure if you've seen it yourself, the actor, actress, singer Keke Palmer went to an Usher concert, and amidst that, her boyfriend, I believe the father to her child, they're not married as such yet, but he made some statements online which received a lot of backlash because he felt she was inappropriately dressed, and he put it out online, and that opened up just a whole array of different people chiming in, from some people saying, well, he's not right to be dragging her publicly, to others saying, well, he has a point with how some of modern women kind of think nowadays in regards to relationships. And then she was also like, I believe, I'm not married, I can do what I want. So there's so many different dynamics. We got to look at modern day relationship dynamics. But speaking of that topic, did you get a chance to check out any of that, or have you heard anything about it?
Absolutely, I'm fully aware of that. I saw the videos. It's gone viral all over the internet, all over YouTube and that. So I've seen it, I've had a look. And I got some strong opinions on that. I think there's fault on both sides there. But I think there's actually more fault on his side, actually. The fault lies with him.
And why do you say that?
The reason I say that is because in any kind of relationship dynamic, the man has to lead, the man has to be in control. And before you make a woman, a lady, your girlfriend, or even more than that, your wife or whatever, you've got to put her through like a vetting process for at least 6 months, where she's got to show to you she can follow your lead, she can follow your instructions on a consistent basis, and that she's cooperative and she does what you want her to do. In any relationship, in any establishment, there has to be a leader. In a football team, there's a manager. On the pitch, there's a captain. In any organization, there's a CEO and there's a director. In any shop, there's a manager. There has to be a leader. And if you are the man, you are the lead. So if that's the case, if he was leading her properly, he should have told her way before he committed to her that dressing like that is not appropriate. He should have told her, and she should have known way before he committed to her that what the deal is, what's acceptable, what's not, what I find acceptable and what I find unacceptable. So if he had vetted her properly, which he should have done, and if he had vetted her properly, and if she had followed his lead consistently for at least 6 months, that wouldn't have happened, because she would have known that wasn't right. And if through the vetting process, if she had done something he didn't like, he should have checked her for it, so she knows that's not right. And if when he checked her, she showed resistance to that, she argued back, she put her point across, he should have then got rid of her, because she's not following his lead and living up to his standards. So the reason why I say it's his fault is because he committed to her before he vetted her properly. Because if he had vetted her properly, he would have known what she's like, how she dresses when she goes out, and she would have known that's not acceptable in the first place. So the fault is mainly on him, in my opinion.
There's definitely some interesting points therein. I'm gonna try and get back to some of them, but I also wanted to make a point because I want to play devil's advocate here slightly, a little bit. And I felt like, because these guys are big celebrities, so not to say that takes away from stuff that average and normal people go through. They go through a lot of the same and similar things. But I say that to say, in the aspect of a lot of people said he was wrong for what he said and doing it in a public manner. And then I feel as though, to a degree, there are people in the public eye and public, scrutiny. So even though he could have waited, maybe he felt like, he's chiming in publicly because it's already a public thing by the time she's out there. Now, I'm not saying that to defend him, but I'm playing devil's advocate in the instance of them being celebrities. How do we know, for instance, perhaps they had a conversation beforehand and maybe he said, I don't want you to wear that dress or that particular outfit or anything like that. And maybe she said, oh, and then she went out and she wore something like that anyway, and that elicited his response. Do you think that could be a possibility?
That is a possibility. We never know what goes on behind closed doors, what private conversations couples have. In response to that, what I would say is, if he had told her that dressing like that is not appropriate to go out, attracting that kind of attention, dressing like that, and she did it, then the fault's on her. And in that situation, he should then get rid of her.
But I noticed
Because
that. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if he's told her in a private conversation, dressing like that's not appropriate, don't wear this, don't wear that, in public, and she still did it, then she's not listening to him. She's not listening to her man. She's not following his lead. So if that's the scenario, which it could be, then in that situation, he should just move on from her.
Well, we've definitely seen an array of, I guess, polarizing ways of looking at it. People feeling one way about it, people feeling another way. Even Russell Simmons' crazy ass daughter, Aoki, chimed in and said, she wants to punch him in the face. And, I believe she's a bit over the top in her response. But I say that to say there's been so many different people chiming in on it and looking at it from, I guess, a relationship standpoint and aspect. One of the points that you made, you said you feel as though he needed to be not necessarily pleased, but if he wasn't happy, then he's got to lay down that kind of law. So it kind of brings me to, I guess, nowadays we see so much struggle for power and different dynamics just in the world, let alone in relationships. A lot of women are going to say, well, we don't feel that we have to, I guess, impress the guy, or what he thinks. If we want to step out this way, we're gonna step out this way. You either gotta like it or deal with it, or I'll meet somebody else, and that kind of mentality. We do see a lot of that too. So I mean, how would you argue it then in that aspect if somebody was to say, well, they hear the point, but why should she have to appease him, so to speak?
Because the problem is, in the modern, today, a lot of modern women don't want to listen to a man, right? The man, as I said earlier, the man has to lead, the man has to be in control. It's our parent generation, our grandparent generation, and going back even further than that, men and women knew their gender roles, right? That's how it was, right? The men lead, the women followed. That's how it was. And in situation now, we're seeing a lot of women exhibiting masculine energy, masculine behavior. They want to lead. That I don't need no man, all that kind of stuff. And it's like a lot of women now are unhappy. A woman's at her happiest, I believe, when she has a man and a family, especially if she's like 30 up, right? But a lot of these women now, they're getting older and they haven't got a man. They're lonely. They have their company as a pet cat or something, because every time a man is invited into their life, they scare them off because of their masculine energy, their attitude. And that's the problem now. And that's why you're seeing a lot of women on antidepressants and all these other kind of mental health drugs and everything like that, because the natural gender roles are out the window, because women don't want to adhere to these natural gender roles that we've had for thousands of years. So we're now seeing situations where women are getting older and they're lonely, and that's on their own fault. And what women have to realize is they have a window when they're in their prime. Let's say from when they become an adult at 18 to their mid-30s. That's their window where they're the most attractive. That's the window where they're the most fertile, and that's the window where they're able to attract the highest value man they can. And in that window, that 17-year age gap between 18 and let's say 35, they should be doing everything they can to get the highest caliber man they can to procreate with and to settle down with. That's what they should be doing. But what you're seeing with a lot of these modern women is they're just exhibiting these kind of attitudes of, I don't need no man, I don't have to listen to no man, I'm a boss chick, Cardi B, Meg Thee Stallion, blah, blah, blah. And the only losers are them. Because when they get older, like, heading towards their 40s, they're not as likely to be able to attract as high caliber man as they would be when they're in their prime. Their looks are declining, their fertility is declining. And not only that, but the men who are high caliber, who they might have a desire for, they're going to be looking for young women in their 20s. Because since the start of time, men want women who are feminine, attractive, fertile, right? That's just primal thing from the start of time. Women are the most feminine and the most fertile and the most attractive in their 20s. So men are looking for women in their 20s, generally, usually. And you can see that with dating app statistics that back that up. So when you start to see women kind of heading towards 40 and they're still single, or they went with some bad boy who was no good for them and left them as a single mother, that's on them. You had nearly 2 decades to acquire the highest caliber man you did. If women didn't do that, that's on them. And I think a lot of women are starting to realize that now. A lot of women are starting to rein back that manly, masculine attitude and starting to be a bit more submissive in their behavior, which is what a man's looking for. You know, the man's supposed to be the alpha, the dominant leader. Women's supposed to be submissive. That's just normal gender roles that have been like that for thousands of years throughout history. Why in the last 10, 15 years are we trying to go against that?
Well, we
You go
do
to certain,
know. I just wanted to interject there slightly. I was just gonna say we do know in today's times they have, I guess, stretched out just the notion of gender. We do know now they incorporate all kinds of different identities and so on and so forth. So you were saying you don't know what's
yeah.
changed in the past. There's a lot of that that's changed.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole other conversation about, you know, all different genders and everything like that, and I can identify as this and that. Let me be straight to the point here. There's only two genders. You're a man, you're a woman. You're a male, you're female. That's it. There's only two genders, and I don't apologize for saying that. So a lot of these, like what you just mentioned there, that's one of the things that contributing towards the situation we have at the moment, where things are not how they're supposed to be with the genders, where people are trying to identify something they were not born as. Whatever you're born as is what you are. That's it. You're born a man, you're born male, you're a male. You're born female, you're a female. And I think a lot of the problems we're seeing in society is we're trying to deviate away from what to me is quite obvious, you know?
Well, yeah, you mentioned, like traditional values and stuff. And there were some points that you mentioned. I know some people will agree, and there definitely will be some that will disagree. And, guys, let us know your thoughts in the comments and stuff. We would definitely appreciate looking over them and stuff. Um, there was a point that you made in regards to the females. You said you feel as though females are at their happiest when they're with a guy and the family and so on and so forth. Now, one of the things that I see quite trending online nowadays at the minute from a lot of males is they feel as though, is there much point them getting into these marriages and relationships and stuff with females? It's like you just said, it could make a female happy, that could be when she's at her happiest. But a lot of guys nowadays feel like, why should they go to, I guess, extreme lengths and efforts when they don't think it's appreciated? Where we see the example of Keke Palmer instance, for instance, where this guy's saying, well, this is somebody I'm trying to start my family with, and I've got a set of morals and principles, but she doesn't necessarily adhere to it. So he could, I guess, bend over backwards in one aspect to make her happy, but he might not necessarily be making himself happy. Some guys feel like they're getting short end of the stick. We see divorce rates going up quite high. And, there's polarizing ways in how it goes. Now we're actually seeing a lot of men getting paid out alimony and stuff, as they should in some cases. But, back to that sort of aspect of the question, because you did mention that you feel that's when females are at their happiest. How do you see with just guys nowadays then just sort of saying, well, this is a bit too much for me putting all my time, effort, and energy into making a female happy, and it may just
Well,
not work out at all?
that's exactly what's happening. A lot of men are checking out the dating game now. Now, I know guys are doing it. You see it online. A lot of men just saying, do you think worth a squeeze? I'm checking out the dating game. I'm not even going to bother. Or what you're also seeing is what they call passport bros, where we're seeing a lot of men in like developed countries, US, Canada, UK. They go into, countries that are kind of less developed and finding a partner there. They're going to places like Thailand, Colombia, Brazil, Dominican Republic, Mexico. They're going to those kind of places to find a wife, because the women in those kind of countries are generally still more submissive, and they still adhere to traditional gender roles, and they don't exhibit that masculine energy that I mentioned earlier. So we're seeing men check out the dating game in developed countries, and we're seeing guys getting their passports and going abroad and trying to find women in other countries. And I know people that do. I know one guy's gone to Morocco and found a partner there. So people are, that's what's happening now. I'm not saying all the blame's on women, but we are seeing dynamics now where men are either checking out the dating game or they're going abroad to find their partners. That's what's happening now. So then you're sort of seeing like an imbalance where if a lot of men are checking out the dating game and going elsewhere, other countries to find a partner, then there's already more women than men in society anyway. And if not of men aren't here to play the game, then a lot of women are going to be single. Simply, all they have to start sharing, guys.
Which we do know happens. But
Exactly.
you made a point I wanted to chime in on, and it was in regards to just, I guess, marriage and the outlook, I guess, from a male's perspective. With that being said, do you feel, let's say, if a man's embarking upon marriage, they're more so looking for those traditional values that you aforementioned from a woman that's probably been more set, you know, in the old days, which some people might say is archaic, some people might say, you know, it's those days are gone. Or do you feel it's the modern women want something different, whereas the men more want the traditional aspect from the marriage, but the modern women they more want, you know, the new world, and they just want somebody to be with them to enjoy it with them, but they don't necessarily want to go with, I guess, some of the older fundamentals of tradition.
Well, I think men. I think men are quite simple, to be honest with you. I think men. What men desire is simple. They want a female who is attractive,
Loyal.
submissive, and loyal. That's it. Attractive, submissive, I listens to him, follows his lead, and loyal. That is literally it. So and that hasn't really changed. I don't think what men are looking for women has changed dramatically from today, 2023, to 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 25 years ago, whatever. I think what's changed is what is women.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some people do feel as though a guy could be in a lot of ways sometimes just as you said, you know, simple. They could just meet somebody, sort of hit it off, get into that relationship and stuff with them, and are willing to sort of,
Because men don't know how to lead. You know, a man, I'm saying that a woman has to follow the man's lead, but other men don't know how to lead in the first place. So men need to, before men enter serious relationships with women, they learn how to lead. Because that's what
yeah, no, you make a yeah. So I think those fundamentals have been taken away in one aspect.
and that may be the case. But as I was earlier, there's reasons for it. Women have more power now than they used to. And one of the reasons why is the feminist movement. Another reason why is women have their own money now. Let's go 40 years ago, 1983, or even back than that. Work because women didn't have their own money. They needed a man. They needed a man. Because they needed a man. They basically shut and listened to what the man said because they need a man. Now women have their own money. They're in the workforce. They earn almost the same, almost equal to what men earn now. So they don't necessarily need a man. So because they don't necessarily need a man, they're able to be more demanding in their requirements. They're able to not adhere to what the man says because their argument is, well, I don't need you. So that's one of the key things that's changed. Women have their own money. They're in the workforce. They're earning almost equal to what men earn now. So that's one of the
If
key
not
things
more
that's
in some
happened. That's
cases.
the relationship dynamic between men and women.
Yeah, you I was saying if not more in some cases in terms of what they are.
Exactly. Exactly. Some cases they earn more. Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's interesting because when we look at things, it's like you were saying, just from the notion of like with the passport bros, and I guess some of these guys go into, I don't want to say less developed places in some aspect, but you know, some people argue and say, well, they're just doing what like the white man's done, you know, got make a bit of money and go to, you know, somewhere else around the world, and you know, get a woman who probably is going to rely on them financially, or so on and so forth. But do you think there's a mindset that changes, I guess, with modern women, I guess, in the workforce or who are making money, you know, get into the bag? I'm not saying everybody's going to necessarily change or follow the same suit, but do you think that sort of skewered things within just, I guess, the Western side of relationships?
Absolutely. It has. You said that the Western side relationships. If you go to some places like in Eastern Europe, for example, I'll use Romania example because Romania's been in the news a lot recently because of obviously Andrew Tate, where he lives there, you know, world kickboxing world champion, blah blah blah. He went to prison there. Romania still adheres to more traditional roles. Like let's say it's 30 years behind the UK. So as a result of that, the women in Romania, and this is what Andrew Tate has kind of said, are still how women here used to be previously. So it's easier to acquire. It's easier for both sides. It's easier for the man to acquire the woman they want, but it's also easier for the woman to find a man that they desire as well, because both genders are still adhering to how things, I guess you say, should be. So in that sense, I do think that, yeah, not just Romania. That's just one example. I use Romania as an example because obviously that's
Yeah.
a country that, you know, well, there's loads of other examples as well.
I mean, of course, you mentioned Andrew Tate, not to get too much into, I guess, a
Mm,
quagmire of his legal wranglings. And, I know people have different opinions on it from a moralistic standpoint. I personally haven't done that much research into, I guess, his ethos or what he says he stands
mm,
for. I've seen a few things here or there, but I do know he has been laden with quite a bit of criticism where people feel as
mm,
though they call him the popular terminology that they utilize toxic masculine. So
mm.
you probably sound like you have a bit more information on maybe some of them. Do you feel he fits into that category, or do you think that category is it? Do you think it's a right label to have, period, or do you think it's one of these over exaggerated or inflated terms that we hear out?
Yeah, I mean, like yourself, I haven't done a lot of research on Andrew Tate and his legal situation. I just used Romania example because I watched a couple of his videos where he was in Romania and he was just showcasing his life out there and talked about, because he's from Luton, which is a town in Bedfordshire in the UK.
Okay.
And I watched a really interesting video. Someone, in fact, one of the guys in my one of my work showed me a video and he was just talking about the difference between his life in the UK, not just in Luton, but just in general, and then his life in Romania. He was just talking about the contrast and the similarities, and it was just something that interested me. The stark differences between two essentially European countries. But to answer your question about toxic masculinity, obviously that's a term that's you're hearing a lot now. It's difficult to say, really. I just think that men need to adhere, and men need to be men, right? This whole there's 42 different genders. No, right? Men need to be men. Men know is to be a man. Men need to know how to lead and guide. That's what women are looking for. And so, if that's the situation, if men knew how to lead, knew how to be men, then everything would be better. Toxic masculinity, well, that's a term they use for people who just want to label someone who exerts um, masculine capabilities, masculine attributes, toxic masculinity. That's what they're essentially using that for. Now, obviously, some people are, in terms of their behaviors and mannerisms, are terrible, right? There's no disputing that. But I think a lot of people are just using the word toxic masculinity simply for a male who exudes the attributes of masculinity that they should have. That's what I think is happening in society now.
Yeah, I mean, some people do feel it is a bit of a misnomer where it's used. We do know in society there are a lot of words that are utilized like that now. One of them that's
Mm,
become quite a pet peeve to me now is woke. You hear people
mm,
demonizing the term woke and saying, "Oh, go woke, go broke, woke culture," but they're attributing the word woke to, I guess, just all the happenings in society, people accepting, everything and stuff, which isn't actually the true definition of the word, because especially coming from the conscious community, woke was always more so used to exemplify people at a higher conscious state, and that doesn't necessarily involve being at a box mind, like you said, with everybody just
mm,
told how to think or how to act or what to follow and stuff. So it's
mm,
kind of a misnomer. I feel as though sometimes we get these terms now, as you said, people use them for their own sort of purpose.
mm. Yeah, well, the term woke. I mean, it's an ambiguous term, isn't it? A lot of people have a kind of slightly different angle on what the word woke means. But I think I've spoken to you about this before. But I just think people need to learn to think for themselves. The media is extremely powerful. We know this, and the media is more of a part of our lives than ever before. Because obviously we have in 24/7 news coverage. We have the internet. We have all the traditional media that we used to have for decades as well. And I just think that a lot of people just they just believe anything. If whatever's on the news, they like a, oh really, oh okay, just believing anything. It's like sometimes you've got to think for yourself. Don't just believe. If they told you the grass was blue, if you told someone the grass was blue, they believe it. They believe anything. And I just think that's the way the society's heading. We've got to learn to think. God gave us a brain, an individual brain, and we all have to learn to think for ourselves. And we live in a woke culture now, but someone says something offensive, but it's like, well, maybe it's true. Maybe what that person said is true, rather than looking at it as taking offense to what that person said. Maybe what they said was actually truthful. I've had examples of myself in the past where someone said something to me that may not have been the nicest, but then when you deep it, maybe it was true. So I just think that we live in a society now where we're getting a little bit too soft, and we kind of need to, go back to how things were in some aspects, not all aspects, because obviously some things are better today, no doubt about that. but some aspects we just need to kind of like, go back to how things used to be.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we do
Mm.
see a lot of division in today's society, and that's one thing that we find, even with some of these conversations, we try not to be too divisive or anything like that. But especially, I see a lot online. You know, you mentioned the media, and you make a great point because for a lot of people, that is their primary source of information or news or whatever, and that's how they get their view of the world or their view of what's
Mm,
going on or their info what's going on. And not all the times it's right. You know, people have agendas, and even some of these outlets, mainstream media, and even sometimes left or right media have
mm,
their agendas and stuff as well. But another thing that we've seen just become a phenomenon over the years has been social media. And with social
mm,
media, it sort of takes just the information out of just the news outlets' hands, but allows people to be able to interject their thoughts and opinions. Now, one of the
mm,
things with that, it can be good, it can be bad, but we do see nowadays a lot of guys, you know, putting up certain types of posts where they seem like they're probably scorned by women in the past. So there's a lot of like, you know, jabs at women, and then you've got women putting up certain type of posts. And you know, as you said or alluded to earlier, a lot of these people in both cases sometimes are often single. And we see you know, shots at each other, or oh, the reason
mm.
why I'm not with somebody is because, you know, X, Y, and Z. And I say all that to say that with this sort of gender divide in the aspect that we see in sort of like the battle of the sexes sometimes, do you feel that people are substantiated in some of the things that they say? Because we see some guys and they say stuff like, well, you know, they've been with, you know, women, they've had a certain type of experience, and they feel as though women don't want to take any type of responsibility and admit any wrongdoings. And you
Mm,
know, some are saying that they're bitter guys. We've seen the Kevin Samuels of the world, and as you
mm,
mentioned, sometimes people hold a mirror up or hold up, and people may not like what's being said, but there could be elements or modicum of the truth to it. But you know, just
mm.
with that being said, with all that kind of backwards and forwards we see with the gender divide between men and women, do you think that it's more so a lot of hurt people, or do you think they have a point to stand up?
Yeah, well, it's the whole, whenever, someone says, oh, this happens in relationships, someone goes back with who hurt you. And, with any relationship that ends, there's usually fault on both sides. You know, whenever someone tells me that their relationship ended and they told me, oh, he did this or she did that, I'm always a little bit more like, okay, well, that's what you've told me. If I spoke to the other party, they probably have a completely different perspective, or you maybe have omitted certain things that you did wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
People like to paint themselves in a good light, so they'll omit the things that they did wrong. And they'll omit the things they did wrong and just talk about the other person what they did wrong. But really, the truth lies somewhere in the middle, where it's a
Usually in
bit
the
of fault
middle
on both
between two
sides.
stories.
Exactly, exactly. And I've seen that. I'm mid-30s now. I've seen that so many times. But you mentioned social media there, and and obviously we're talking about modern women, and social media and the internet in general has a massive impact on dating, because in the past, let's say, I don't know, 50 years ago, a women, females in general, just had to get with someone in their local area, so in their town, in their city where they lived, where they resided, where they socialized, etc. But because of the internet and social media now, women are able to get with people all over the country, in some cases all over the world. You know, a woman could be on Instagram, right? And a footballer, a famous rapper, NBA player, whatever, could inbox her. So before, she only had access to the guys in her local area and in her vicinity, right? Average guys earning average salaries, doing average things. Now she's got millionaire guys hitting her up. That's also changed the dynamic of relationships, because now a woman's like, well, I don't have to settle for that guy who earns 35 grand a year. I can go and get with that footballer or that rapper who's a multimillionaire, and they'll DM her. She'll show she's interested. Next thing you know, they're flying her out. Next thing you know, she's partying with all the famous people. She's on yachts, all that kind of thing. So the social media and the internet has had a massive impact on dating, and that will increase as well as time goes on. And men are starting to use almost Instagram as like essentially the biggest dating app now, isn't it? Really, it's a social media app, but really it's the biggest dating app, right? Men out there, not just famous men, men in general, are using it to source females, look for partners and hookups and that kind of thing. So social media and internet have changed dating forever. Things will never, the toothpaste cannot go back in the tube. Essentially, it'll never go back to how it was, because women now know, that say some attractive female in some remote village in Bulgaria, right? Previously, no one would have known who she was apart from people in her area. But now that attractive woman in some remote village in rural Bulgaria, she can get some millionaire guy business.
She can have 100K subscribers if you show her body.
Exactly. What you just said is exactly right, and it's changed dating dynamics forever. Is it making it better or worse?
Well, some of them, just to put a button on that, because I know I was just gonna say some of them, they are actually even with their partners, and they encourage them to, you know, do that stuff for money and stuff, just like, you know, OnlyFans, and, you know, they take the pictures of them, they put them up, and they're cashing them with them. They got, you know, hundreds or in some cases thousands of guys maybe hitting them up or sending them money, and they're taking pictures out on the beach, but they're with their boyfriends, some of them. And, you know, I mean, it's not for me to be the moral judge on them, but I was just gonna say that some of that's happening too, because you were speaking of just how social media has changed some of the dynamics.
Absolutely. You do see men essentially monetizing their women, monetizing their partners, which again is something that hasn't happened before. Obviously, what a man does in his relationship's up to him. It's not something I personally do, but if that's what they want to do, if they want to monetize their partner, then obviously that's their business. But I just feel that it can work. It can benefit the man as well, though, because, you know, talk about, you know, sourcing females. A man now has a wider pool as well, so it kind of works both ways. Men and women both have wider pools to choose from now. It's literally global now. It's like a global dating scene, whereas before it was just like a local dating scene of your little town or village that you lived. So that's another way that, you know, modern women and dating dynamics have changed in society today.
Yeah, I find it just interesting that you mentioned social media and people utilizing apps such as Instagram and such. The irony is, you know, for some of us who have probably been internet users going back for some years, I personally feel as though in the earlier stages before everybody was on the internet, then I would have been more comfortable probably meeting somebody I've met, because the likelihood was it was actually them. Whereas nowadays, you know,
catfish.
You hear about all these other things. That, I mean, you know, you could get lucky. You might be the person that you're speaking to. I suppose you really gotta vet them and check them out and so on and so forth. And you know, obviously, in the instances where people are getting hit up by celebrities, those guys are, you know, verified and they can see their pages and, you know that it's that person. But yeah, I was just saying that just more in the instance of nowadays, it's also brought on just a lot of you know, as you said, like the catfishing and just, you know, scams and all that kind of nonsense. But it definitely is interesting. Like I said, we do see a lot of the conversation online, especially from a lot of guys who are chiming in where they feel as though just nowadays they don't personally feel that they want to give so much of their energy to invest into like chasing relationships and stuff. If they feel that the person isn't suitable, because they feel in the past that some guys have been maybe perhaps passive in the sense of getting with a female that they probably didn't necessarily think was ideal for them anyway, but went along with things and it sort of didn't work out. And now they're looking at, as you said, the wider aspects of, you know, women having a variety of options, and you know, guys are no longer being and from what I see in some aspects prior to that, like they're kind of like, well, we know that you got tons of dudes hitting you up, sort of thing. Like that, you know, you got some guys who are tapping out, say, hey, you know, I'll leave you guys to it, you know, I'm not gonna do all that. And I guess on the other end of the spectrum, but we're running out of time. We got to wind down on this one. I mean, I definitely love to hear people's thoughts as well. Also, do you have anything else you want to add before we get out?
Yeah, well, she was just adding on to the point you just made there. Obviously, which you said, people have more options now. More options creates less patience. It's like, if I'm not getting what I want straight away, boom, 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 I'm off, because I know that there's loads of other options I can get. And that's men and women, both genders. Whereas before, it's like people were more likely to maybe accept what they didn't really want, because there weren't as abundant options. And it was like, case of, okay, if I'm not with this person, like for example, a female, if I'm not with this guy who's not really doing what I want, if I'm not with him, who am I going to be with? I've got no job, I've got no money, I need a man. So they're more like to accept maybe what they don't like. But now it's just like, got my own money, got my own man, got my own house. She said, she's like, he's not doing what I want, I'm off. I've got loads of other options out there. So yeah.
Yeah, we see a lot of that even in meme form, and you know, a lot of different conversation based around that sort of topic. we could go off into a few different tangents on it. We're definitely gonna build again. I've got a few people I'm hoping will come in and maybe have a discussion with us as well. Also, shouts out to Aunt Carver Ashay. She joined us before and spoke about some spirituality aspects in terms of relationships. But I definitely want to, extend the platform out and get some more females on as well to speak their perspective. We're not here to bombard anybody and any male versus female stuff, but we definitely want to have some powerful conversations and extend the build, because we can look at things oftentimes from our perspective, but it's good to hear, some of those girls and females come from their perspective, because a lot of them, there's some powerful ones out there, and they're pretty mind blowing when you hear them and you hear what they're about to say when they speak from the heart and from the mind. So definitely, peace to all the family out there. I definitely want to say rest in peace to Mutulu Shakur, also, who passed away last week. So thoughts and condolences with all the Shakur family. And peace to everybody. We're coming up to mid-July right now, still continuing to celebrate 50 years of hip-hop. So we're doing it up for the culture. Your boy FONZi NeuTRON, Bout Online, DOA TBM. Shouts out to Dean, definitely been a class act, joining us once again. And we're looking forward to the next one.
It's the diary of a time black man. It's the diary of a time black